Hi, so I'm Laurie Apple, and I guess I'll be hosting most of this enhancement subproject meeting today. As always, please be excellent to each other and follow our code of conduct. So we're here today to try to find out what we can do to move forward with one of our most important long-term efforts, which was KEP 617, which was basically how to implement a KEP's process and enhance it. So for this meeting, I have spun up this document, which acts as a roadmap of sorts. It's aimed at covering what are the key steps in the enhancements process along the way, along with key users. So we have different kinds of users who are invested in this process and also making sure that this process provides them with what they need in terms of information. And then what are our questions that we haven't answered yet? There's a lot of questions in this document about status of things. So my plan for the session, and we also have Ricardo Katz's issue here, so I don't want to steamroll over Ricardo here. But this might actually cover what we're going to do might actually cover this item in some way. But if not, do you know how much time you would want today? Because I think this is going to be this can be time consuming, it depends.
Hi, my item is just like, as I proposed that in the Slack channel, and I think that Bob asked me or John asked me to bring this to the meeting.
Okay.
So this is like, I think this is actually fast, and probably it's going to complement the CAP. It's just how can we keep the track of abandoned feature gates, or how can we keep the track and deprecate them or make them GA, and what's the process that we want to follow.
Okay, so how much time do you think you might need if in a best of possible worlds for today?
I think that's 10 minutes maximum.
10 minutes. Okay, I'm going to try to make that happen for you. And everyone else keep in mind, Ricardo would like 10 minutes on this topic. So if we can make that happen, +1. So let's just run through quickly what we're going to do here. So my plan is to just review the goals of this doc, which I've already started, and then how it's set up, also maybe done. So that brings us to the next step, which is actually running through the headers in the doc. So just looking at like the high level things that we've called out in the past that we would like to do, just so we can get a sense of the narrative and the different needs that we've pointed out. So to compile this document, I've actually gone through GitHub issues, agendas, side documents, past notes, like everything that I could find related to enhancements process. I tried to distill into the essence of what the action items were and put them here in a narrative that we can follow. And then as we go through the items at the header level, we bookmark with us asterisk, what is a goal that we would like to achieve during 120? So these are like roads. And then the items with the most asterisk we'll return to in the next step for further clarification. So we just want to run through this stuff real fast, knowing that we're going to get to it again in more detail after we've done that exercise. As we go through the doc, we'll see that there are questions in yellow highlight. There's also questions in aqua, which I've marked with an aqua Q. And those are questions that we're likely to not be able to answer today. But I think with the highlighted questions in yellow, we can, because they're just mainly like, what is the status of this? And then hopefully we have enough time to discuss the items we've asterisked the most, to the point where we can actually think about who might own and drive them, what else is needed, et cetera, from a process and execution level. And then what do we do with the rest? And there was a question here about whether stale KEPs and unresponsive KEPs might be related to the above. Yeah, absolutely. Bring your points into this discussion about that. Any questions? Okay, so here's our doc. And I just put the timeline at the top to give us a sense of like what we've already defined for like anything that we do, anything we want to do, we decide to do for 120. The fact is, the decision was last time that we would not actually change anything about the enhancements process this release cycle, that we would prepare ourselves for 121. So in 120, we just have business as usual. Everything goes as normal.
But can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah,
for 120, we want all of the caps to be in the new format, correct?
Do you mean broken out into a folder?
Yeah, like with the folder and the cap.yaml and the like the two files.
All, Kirsten, do you mean? I mean, I think all caps that are being delivered in 1.20 should be in the new format. I don't know.
Okay.
We talked something about, I guess, previously about converting them all as a potential. Like, I know Tim Hawken did try to do that at one point. He looked at it and it was going to be a huge pain because so I don't know how important it is. What we've generally been doing is the tooling kind of can interpret both types, although it's not always successful. There's certainly.
Does the tooling require the cap.yaml, like the separate cap.yaml, or?
We might get to this in issues.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's all here, so I think.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so please make sure that we don't lose your question. Just bookmark that because I think we're going to get to it.
Okay, perfect.
Everything is literally here, I think. All right, so there are two action items just highlighted here. Just I didn't know where they went, so I just put them here. But these were established goals for 120, and I don't know what they are in relation to. So if you know, then you can feel free to move it to the appropriate item. So the people that we need to think of in this work is inspired by Josh Berkus's Make Caps Transparent issue, where he identified user personas for transparency around this process. So there's the upstream Kubernetes developer who wants to complete a feature or pitch something that replaces a proposed feature with something better. An end user who wants to consume a feature and know what caps are in progress or what the status of them is. And this is also like for Paris, like think of Paris and acting in her capacity is like, how would we inform her accurately about caps in the status? And then the communications team is another potential end user for how to share information with the CNCF, on the blog, other venues, social media. Then there's the enhancements team member who wants to automate solutions for accessing, collecting, and sharing accurate data. Some of you. The reviewer who wants or needs to block a current cap for some reason. And SIG chairs or leads aiming to roadmap their SIG cycles, what features do they want to push in a cycle, and then also align with others, and be responsive, ideally to other people and other SIGs and other bodies in the ecosystem. So there's our users. If you think there's a missing one, call it out.
I think the reviewer, I think it's not just who needs to block a current cap, it's reviewer who needs to identify. So like I'm thinking of identify caps that need attention.
Okay.
And that could be because they're assigned, like as a PRR approver, for example, or an approver, or it could be because it's associated with their SIG or whatever. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's great context. So I guess I am the note taker here.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got that fleshed out a bit. All right. So then when we talk about process, oh, sorry. Does anybody else have a user persona that's missing?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Before we jump into the processing steps, can we have a thought here or any opinions? In 120 of these personae, which ones do we see as the ones we or rather, regardless of release, which of these do we see as the ones we want to address more urgently Does anybody have any thoughts around that? I mean, I think.
I'm just I'm the enhancements lead for 120. So I've gone through and I've basically cleaned up the tracking sheet and pinged all of the caps and everything to get like a sense of what's going on. And I think the reviewers is kind of one of the most important user personas because they're the people who are the most overwhelmed. They don't always have the context and they're kind of the most essential. So I think that anything that can help the reviewers immediately is probably going to help everybody else.
Okay, that's great. That's great feedback.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And the reviewers are probably also the same people sort of as the SIG chairs, just again, different hat.
A lot of them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this could actually, we could just combine like, because they often are the same people. It's
Well,
sort
I
of
would
like
make it
SIG
reviewers
leadership.
and leads. I mean, kind of, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
Like,
there's a lot of bleed
well,
over.
Yeah, I mean, general SIG leadership and who can take actions and move things forward in a big way. Okay.
Okay, so that focus changes our focus quite a bit. Like we're not going to be, although we'd like to help out Kirsten's team here, we make their lives easier. That's not necessarily our priority by her own admission. So, thank you.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I mean, we might change our minds as we go.
It's good community spirit. She's interested in the overall health of the community.
Well, I was going through it and I was just thinking about it and I'm like, you know what, like what we have to do is like pretty straightforward, but if we can somehow eventually transition to looking at the quality of the KEP to make sure that like it's meeting all of the requirements as opposed to just pinging everybody, then that's going to also help the reviewers as well. So I don't know, I think that that's like kind of a better focus than just automating and focusing on pings, because that only gets you so far with like what you're going to get out of the caps personally.
Right, we definitely want to validate. Yeah, okay, the specific whether it's meeting requirements.
Mm-hmm. I mean, ideally, there's ways to serve both users, right? So if we put this group first, then thinking also about how the enhancements team benefits.
I think we'll find it's all fairly interconnected as we go along.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think helping the reviewers just helps. I think helping the reviewers like helps everybody. It helps.
Yeah.
Thinking is very straightforward, but making sure things are finished and making sure that the SIGs are happy and making sure that they see everything. That's like the most essential part of the actual CAP process.
Okay. All right. So we're 20 minutes in. I think we need to go faster to be able to cover what we want to cover.
Sorry, I'll try not to derail again.
No, that was actually a really good pull out. It really is defining a person. It's good. All right. So the first step, I'm going to just run through these real fast. The first step in this process is determining if a KEP is needed or not. So the following items just address where can I go for information about KEPs in the process, determining whether a KEP is needed or not, and then ensuring the process is as clear and streamlined as possible so that I can like actually do this. So some of the high ticket or high level items, Kristen, did you want to say something? Oh,
Me?
maybe you coughed or something. Okay. All right, so at the higher level, these are like GitHub issues we've previously covered or just questions that were like big ticket questions. Updating enhancements, repo documentation to provide guidance. So there's a link here. I was just wondering what's unresolved. So if someone can click through that and what's left, what's keeping it open. And then refining existing KEP documentation. So here's a couple of things. Speaking to the need for maintaining leverage to ensure that we don't end up with like perma betas during the process. There were some documentation related efforts that would help clear up some of the process questions here. The next high-level question is clarifying, should I use a KEP for this or not? And this was to reduce mental overhead and confusion. So primarily here, we're asking, should KEPs be used for process changes and KEP types, so feature versus policy versus other types. I've included here the question, is there a better way to manage dissent or say no to KEPs before they are drafted? This was described somewhat in one of the subtopics in that 617 item, which is standardizing an inter-KEP denotation for not resolved.
Do we want to jump into these now, Laurie, or are we trying to?
No, the idea here is to go through the high level and then we go through details. But some of these are like medium level. So I just want to I think with this one, because this one's kind of tightly packed actually, I wanted to go through these sub items too. And then here's the formalizing one enhancement, one KEP for alpha beta GA. Is that resolved or not? This was also in 617. I should have highlighted as red because my coloring, my color coding is picking those out. After you figured out that you need a KEP, then the next question is creating and submitting the KEP. So here we have this item about improving the KEP template. In past sessions, we've identified this as medium priority. There's a bunch of items here related to this and a bunch of questions. Handling KEP lists and randomly submitted features to save ourselves time, or I should say better. So there's no issue for this at the moment, but it's come up before. I think that soliciting feedback, release cadence for auditory features is related. If it's not, please feel free to move it. The third step is optimizing the process for tracking and validating KEPs. So I should call out that I've actually tried to define the persona that these steps serve, but this one is the most complicated perhaps because it's kind of serving everybody. But given our previous conversation, let's think about this in terms of reviewers to then serve the enhancements team. So one tactic here that's been pitched is just attending SIG meetings to gain insights about release cycle plans. A much larger issue is revisiting criteria and the process for alpha beta GA. There are general process improvements and clarification needs. You'll see some of these notes. Define a clear workflow, our guidance for graduation criteria, settling questions about KEP ownership, like who's the assignee, these sorts of things. Then I've broken this down into alpha specific and beta specific questions. This is like another theme just within beta is using the KEP's beta milestone. And I don't know why this is a different size, but it's just basically it's the information on using this clear, consistent, or documented. Then we have the issue of tracking enhancement slip across multiple releases to prevent perma-beta and tech debt situations. Jeremy has shared some data today about past enhancement slip, so that's just quite helpful. And then there's a bunch of questions about who is responsible, how could we limit the lifespan of KEPs that are unresponsive or abandoned, these sorts of things. Step 3A, this is about the tooling. I think someone made the point, Bob did, it's so interrelated, a lot of this work. So I was trying to pull it apart, but knowing that process and tools, we can't really divide them, but the process needs to lead the tools. This is a leftover from 617, adjusting GitHub tooling for KEPs. I'm not sure what here is unresolved, so I've just copied and pasted the points from the actual KEP document. Then there was automating the generation of KEPs. So here I'm putting this first because it's sort of like, what's the first thing that you do when you make a KEP? So how do we automate the generation of these? And here were some 617 items, creating the tooling to generate managed KEPs. This is a subtopic of 617. So there's a lot of nesting going on here. It was kind of tricky. There's also metadata split from KEP text and removing some fields from metadata. So these were all asks in that initial 617 doc. I don't know if these are still active or relevant, if they've been resolved or what. So this was this was why we are here.
Yeah.
Bob, you want to say?
Oh, I think the metadata split from kept text is done, at least with the change the format of breaking it out from the README.
Oh, okay.
That's like the kept YAML.
Yep.
Okay, so that comes down further, and I might have put that in the wrong place.
Well, the question is whether this work item was to convert them or not. No.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. It's not. That's fine. We're good.
Okay, so this is done.
Sorry about that.
And then the next one should be done too. I think we removed these last updated superseded by replaces, but we should double check that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've put this here. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
I can put a question mark.
Yes.
I love the kept.yaml file too. Like, it's so easy to like just open and look at it really fast. Like,
no good.
So, yeah, that comes a little bit further. It should be really soon. Okay, so these two we think are resolved. So we have the automating generation of KEPs. And then there's the automation of the graduating, tracking, validating KEPs through approval phases. So this is where it got a little tricky because we've had the question all along, what does KEP cuddle actually do? Do we need more tools? So I'm trying to present the info with that question in mind. But first, there's just one other side issue to this process, which is defining the triage and tracking process for these dash feature issues and PRs and KK. This was marked as low priority, so maybe we don't even mind it.
I mean, I kind of wonder though, if we're process driven, if we want to be process not tooling driven, then that seems like it should be higher priority. Like, what is the so automated graduated tracking, validating, kept through approval phases. So I think we need to rework like how we use the feature tracking issues versus the kept metadata, and then there's discussion of the sort of ticketing system for enhancements and inclusion in a release. Like, we need that write-up or that discussion, or somebody needs to think through or propose what that actual workflow is. And I guess this is part of that, but it's not maybe the whole thing.
Yeah, that's why we need to figure out what the entrance door to that question is. So you have a lot of options here. So like, you know, just moving through the rest of the list, deciding what KEP cuddle should cover and not cover. This was high priority. So I've put some notes about how it's been framed. Current features, this is actually a question because I'm not 100% clear still on how this thing works and what it does. So you can clarify that all. And then the next item here is defining and implementing an automated receipts process to help enhancements team divest from cat herding. So, you know, is there overlap? Oh, I hate when this happens. Is there overlap between the two goals or the two tools? Like, how is this currently handled and what needs to happen?
I think much of the automate graduating, tracking, and validation also goes hand in hand with the automating of receipts, because those two workflows are sort of tied together, at least from the previous talks of how the sort of entire thing would work.
Okay, do you think that's not covered here, or it's not phrased?
I think, well, it probably want part of CapCTL, but you know, we can just skip that for now.
Okay, because yeah, you have the receipts process and you have KEP cuddle. So one's a process that needs to be turned into tooling. The other is a tool. What processes does it cover? I think
Yeah.
this is the essence of what we're trying to figure out here. And then
Okay.
here,
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, and then here's the cap YAML. No, it's confusing. Here's the cap YAML improvements. So I found 2 issues related to this, and there might be others that we need, but I think the question here is, are they in the right place? So do they go with anything else we've already covered?
And those look like kept cuddle like tweaks, right? Improvements.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know how to move this stuff, so can you?
Maybe.
Like, which items should they go with, I guess?
I mean, they're fine where they are. Or they would go into the validating, probably. They're about the validation of keps, but they're about the tool, not the process, shall we say.
Okay.
I'm trying to find what the things are in the document.
Yeah, like they're still in that validating header. So they are under that umbrella, but it's really like, what helps you? Okay. So then after that, there's basically just one more step, which is making the website. And I'm not meaning technically, right? Maybe all the technology, maybe all the tools just make this website as a side effort, but you know, that final publicizing what keps are live, what they need help, which ones need help, social media guidelines.
So one of the questions that I see, there's 2 things I see kind of popping up a couple times in here.
Mm-hmm.
One is, how do we get the attention of reviewers? You know, when a cap needs urgency, like it's kind of expressed in different ways here, but I think that sentiment is expressed in multiple ways, and Kirsten brought it up earlier. The other one is, this last one of these questions that was just in one of them was like, and Kirsten brought up code being merged. Like, how do we prevent disconnect between the truth on the ground, like what code's merged for a feature, and whether the feature is in or out of the release? And
Yeah.
you know, and that gets back kind of to like, well, maybe to the feature gate piece. Like, like if people just merge code and they don't update the cap, the code's still in the release, right?
Yeah, that's a big problem too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also do see people like kind of getting PRs in, and then they open a cap, and then they're like, oh, like, and then people kind of disagree with the cap, but they already kind of merged other PRs that I guess people didn't know was a part of something else that they planned. So I think some kind of, I don't know. So I think this is a big just tracking issue, but then like a conceptual issue of like the SIG should be able to see, they should be able to kind of vet the feature that's going in before people start merging things to it. And it's like, how can you vet it if people are already merging? Like,
this has gone back to sort of like the milestone maintainers discussion we've had with like, you know, essentially it needs to be milestone before the PR can be merged.
Yeah.
So all these points I think are actually addressed already, because you've been wanting these improvements for a while. So
right. I'm saying these are. I'm trying to sort of think about the themes that come up generally throughout a number of these.
So there might be. So we didn't make the asterisks about which items we really wanted to, but that might be helpful to like isolate these core concerns.
Well, okay. Let me go through. Let me look through.
Yeah. I mean, the outline helps actually kind of see what topics are there.
I don't think personally, my step one, determining if a cap is needed. That right now, Christian's saying that that's still somewhat of a problem in the sense that like people merge stuff and then create the cap, which is problem, but addressing that is probably more about continuing education for the
The
leads.
reviewers and approvers.
Yeah, the change leads.
Agree.
And making sure people realize this is really important to do in order for the rest of the product to have visibility into what their SIG is doing. I think if there are questions there around refining the criteria, it is somewhat of a judgment call, right? Of, oh, that's just a minor tweak versus that's something that we need to have consensus on, we need a cap. And that we sort of rely on the judgment of our leads to make that decision. And I don't think we're going to get away from that, but if there's more guidance people need, maybe we can solicit questions.
Well, I think once the CAP process becomes a little smoother, then people will also feel like they'll participate more, I think, in the correct timeline of process too. So I think
there's a lot of administrative overhead over with CAPs.
Yeah, I mean, that was the point made before. It's like there's even types of things that come up all the time that aren't decided if they're a CAP or not.
Well, those ones on the screen right now, those are like ones that come out of SIG Arch, and those aren't the typical problems for your typical SIG. There are things that come out of the weird horizontal SIGs like Arch and scalability, in my opinion. Like I don't, and this, a process like that's not most people, right? Most people are dealing with, they want to build some feature. So it's built around the 80% case, and I'm not sure that we need to resolve. I'm not sure that resolving this will help very many people. That's what I'm trying.
Yeah, for those, like a lot of times, like even just as the enhancements team, you just like do like a track out of tree or whatever, because it's not going to necessarily follow the same process as like a normal like SIG node feature or something. So. Yeah.
If you want an immediate example, it's like the needs triage label that KEP we just did. Well, Contribex just did.
Oh, right. That would be another group that would have this need. For whatever reason, my browser doesn't. It's weird.
Like just going through all of the KEPs this weekend, like there were only maybe like 3 KEPs that would be like, is this? I mean, if you're talking from a cosmic sense, like should this be a KEP versus some sort of policy something? Like there's not very many of them.
Okay. So we can triage those away and really focus again on our reviewers and enhancements team.
So that next question, is there a better way to manage dissent or say no before CAPs are drafted? So the idea behind, if you read the original CAP stuff, right, is that you're supposed to merge it quickly without having to put a ton of work into it. The process and the tooling doesn't support that super well. We tried to make that better with 617, where we created these not resolved denotations. You can see it there. But I'm not sure how well that works, because we would need to support, like that's actually good. I would need something to say, let me go and find not resolved sections and CAPs with unresolved sections. And the tooling will need to say, you can't make this implementable because there's these unresolved sections. That would help that somewhat. One question I have is, do people, maybe Bob, you would know this, and I don't know if we have any way to measure this, but like, what is generally people's workflow? Are they GitHub notifications? Are they the PR dashboard?
It's unfortunately all of the above. Like everyone has their own different workflow, generally dependent on honestly how much stuff they're subscribed to. One of the big things, so the KEPs did have something where like there was a status like it's like not accepted, or that like we are actively agreeing not to do this. But those
status, I'm the only one who's ever used it, I believe.
Yeah, because going back to the thing of saying no, just generally people don't want to do that sort of thing. Ideally, before a KEP is necessarily drafted, it's discussed with the owning SIG, and in many cases that does occur, but there are places where they aren't, and that's where things can start to get a little hairy.
Right. So if we think about if we think about that sort of from a high level, right? Yeah. So somebody had an idea. The normal workflow would be, the sort of expected process we'd want people to follow would be, hey, send an email to your SIG's mailing list, and or bring it to the SIG meeting, have a discussion about it there.
Actually, I have an idea for that one.
Okay.
In either keps.yaml or in the template or whatever, essentially make it a requirement to have like a link to either the meeting notes or some other document where the original what prompted it.
That's a good idea. So link to your mailing list discussion on this, or link to your meeting notes.
Meeting notes, recording, essentially what prompted the start of that enhancement.
And then there can be a note in there that says, if you don't have this, start the discussion first before you take the time.
Yeah, I actually had a few KEPs this time when I was just going through them, where the KEP was like the start of, like, there was like people were like, oh, can I get somebody to look at this? And I'm like, well,
you're supposed to
do legwork for yourself. And I have like a nice response that I give them, but I'm like, you need to socialize this, KEP before, like, before people start saying like yes to it, like try the Slack channel, try the mailing list, try the SIG meeting. And I think a lot of people they think if they open a KEP, they float in and they open the KEP, and then they're like, okay, like is John going to read this now and approve it? Like,
yeah.
It doesn't, and I think making that mandatory, like whether it's a sponsor or whether it's like proof that you socialize the idea, at least, is going to cut down on a lot of the confusion of like, what do I need to do to even submit this KEP?
And I do really like making it required, because like in the checklist and things like that we've done, people literally just delete the line.
So another point on this, and we're kind of running low on time. So I think we want to give time to Ricardo, but we've also talked in the past about requiring KEPs to have a sponsor or a shepherd.
Yeah.
That's well known in the SIG. We've talked about leads, but I think that's putting too much on leads personally. But it has to be somebody that is well known and involved, has credibility. Maybe needs to be an approver. Maybe that would be a way to measure that, as opposed to a lead. That would kind of probably be the second. That would be another way you could record that, but like somebody could just put somebody's name. So I think putting the link in and then sort of showing this person's willing to kind of make sure this gets delivered would be useful.
Yeah. Well, I think it also reinforces the idea that like KEPs are a part of features that a SIG is deciding to deliver. And like you have your timeline, but the SIG also has to maintain this KEP, has to maintain this feature in the future. So it has to be planned for. And I think anything that you can reinforce that this is planning, it might not get in this release, it might be another release. So you have to be kind of committed to socializing your idea and getting feedback on it and, doing all of the work, I think is going to actually cut down on a lot of the problems, because people are going to know better what they're getting into like immediately, instead of just like, I have my PRs up, I have this KEP, can somebody approve it so I can merge it, which isn't really going to happen. Better to find out sooner than later, I think.
So I see text about idea add required field for discussion. Like where do we add it?
So that it would probably wind up in the KEP YAML.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does this relate in any way to the KEP YAML questions further below? Like, would we be able to roll this into a KEP YAML update of some sort?
I mean, it would be a validation.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, is that yes or no? Different things?
I would just leave it here. It's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll need to take, there's going to be, because of the way that it's structured, right, there's going to be, we want to do process. So we're going to go through and identify process points, and then we're going to have to like rework them to fit how they fit to the tooling, which is, I think, the right way to do it. But we don't need to do it right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you aren't confirmed that you want to do this change right now.
No. We're confirmed we want to do the change. I'm saying we're going to have to take, well, I don't know about that, but we're going to want to, we're going to come up with ideas and comments and thoughts as we go through this document again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to have to collect all those and figure out what they mean for tooling.
Yeah, so, I mean,
I'm saying this doesn't need to be repeated anywhere in the document, which is what I thought you were asking.
No. I'm saying, like, if you do this once, if you touch the cap YAMLs once, I can't remember what the changes were further below, but like it might make sense to do those as well, if you know.
Well, I think that this helps regardless of the tooling though too. Like you can like even if the tooling isn't like where it needs to be, requiring, you know, that people do this step, I think has like immediate payoff.
Right. Well, I mean, I think one of the things we have to think about here is how is this work currently flowing forward, right? Like whatever small changes we can make to this process, you know, thinking small, I think is key, because I don't see huge sweeping workflow rivers here. I see trickles, right? It's taking time because people are on a lot of other topics.
Well,
so,
this idea here, like whether you automate it or not, it's something that even like the enhancement team can look at when they're going through the caps and say, hey, like, just so you know, this is gonna be untracked until, you know, you have your socialization check off or something.
Yeah.
So like, I think that adds a lot of value, whether it's automated or just manual.
Right, but I'm wondering, like, how do we get this done? Like, this seems like a fairly small change, right? So it's
as an intermediary thing, we could either make it a part of the issue template or make it part of the KEP template itself.
Yeah. So this is what I'm thinking. Like, how do we get it done? You know, how do we
you
make
want
these
some
small
quick
changes?
wins.
Yeah, because that makes these big questions a lot simpler to manage. Right now, we just have a lot of ideas, but they're not moving forward. So
you would add it to a template, and then you would make it a triage step for the enhancement team. And it would say, you know, before you can proceed on any KEP, you just have to make sure that this is filled out. If this is filled out, then it's a no-go.
So
it sounds so simple.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but I've been saying this in KEPs a lot, like over the weekend too. So like,
so why don't we just do it? Why don't? Is there any risk to just doing it?
So yeah, like, sorry.
Go Val.
Go for it.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, we should just do it. Who's going to take it on? If we do it in the template and we have humans enforcing it, then there's very low risk because humans can always make exceptions. So we just need to sign somebody up.
I can make a PR to the issue template right now.
Oh, see, this is what I'm saying. This is great.
Okay. But now we are at the last 10 minutes, so we should switch over.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to ask quickly, how can we continue this conversation offline to make things move forward? And just where can the KEP cuddle conversation happen? Because that one's been around since June. Maybe we don't answer it right now, but that's what's burning on my mind right now. How do we get that moving?
Yeah. I'd say let's move that one to Slack, at least for now, just so we can cover the next topic.
Yep, that was my idea. All right, so I'll stop sharing.
Actually, if you can share the agenda, Lori, so we can see. And
Ricardo, I have to do other things. Sorry.
Do you want me to share here? I'm with everything open here, John. So that's
okay. Okay, I can make you. Okay, you should be able to share now.
Great. So here we are. So what happened here? I was going to send you the issues first, but I think this is pretty. I can explain by those issues. So Tim Hawking started to open a lot of issues in our SIG network meeting to move or deprecate or make them GA a lot of feature gates that seems to be abandoned. So we had like the IPVS that it's GA since 1.10 or 1.11, I think, and other ones. So this is like the IPVS. It didn't got any logics inside the code that needed to be removed, only the cube features stuffs. And then we asked it for Jordan, for Jordan Digit, about what's the deprecation life cycle of this. And he told us, okay, you cannot like move this one from Amin. Amin is also in the meeting. Because even if this one it was marked to be GA, I think was on the 118, you need to block the feature before and then move that feature, and then we are going to probably lose a life cycle still having this as a feature gate, because this was like forgotten to be moved to be locked. So those are this is a case, and this one is another case. But what happens in this one is that this feature gate was marked to be moved to GA in 119, and I think it wasn't, and then to remove it in 121. So the question here is how can we keep the track of those feature gates that need to be moved and they need to be blocked, so we can keep the code clean. So I've tried to like assign a milestone in sorry, I think this one. So okay, if we are going to remove this on 122, I want to just assign a milestone, and then the SIG release or the SIG architecture or someone can keep the track into this one, and oh, you forgot to move this to GA, you forgot to move this to beta. But I cannot do that because I think this is mostly related to the SIG release. So the question here is how if we can put in the CAP process, like okay, you got your feature merged, so you have to release until you move to beta. Let's open, like proactively open an issue and mark this as a release V130. You know, and in V130 you need to move that to beta or to remove that from the code. And when you move that to beta, you can close that previous issue and then open a new one to move that to GA. So you cannot lose you don't lose the track of feature gates, and those kind of stuff doesn't happen. I'm still waiting for Jordan and team to decide. I don't know if it's only them or if it is something related to SIG architecture also. But what's the process that we wanna move? We wanna follow to the removal of feature gates, and then the issue opening and so on. And also a point that I don't want to lose is that the SIG docs also asked us for whatever proposal we made, and I was taking a look into the capCTL, cuddle, whatever.
Yeah,
so
that's actually us. Maybe make feature gates a required, not necessarily required field, because some things won't have them. Make them a field in like the kept metadata, so that way you have specifically listing it.
Yeah, we have feature gates. We kept.yaml already asks for the feature gate or gates associated with. We have one endpoint slices that has two different feature gates. For the feature gate associated with it. So as we move a cap from through the process, which is also in the kept.yaml, right? We've got alpha, what release it goes to alpha, what release it goes to beta, what release it goes to GA. We may need to have some way to ask post GA, right? To say, flag this and say, this went GA last release or in 2 releases or whatever our policy is. The feature gate is still there. I don't know. That's a great question, like how much of this we can automate, because people forget stuff, or you create an issue and then people walk away and you know, it's just one of 200 issues for the SIG and they don't notice it. So like, we need a way to.
Well, one option, because basically when you close out a milestone, what I've been doing this weekend is I go through and all of the things that are GA, I say, hey, like, you forgot to mark this as, you know, implemented in the kept.yaml file, right? So that's like kind of the last step, is marking it as implemented in the kept.yaml, and then it's removed from the milestone in the issue, and then the issue itself can be closed. For those, you could, I mean, just off the top of my head, you could mark it as implemented, but leave it in the milestone so that the only things that remain in the GitHub issue milestones are these feature gates that need to be removed or tracked or whatever, and then somehow automate that and say like, hey, SIG whatever, you have these things open. Like that would be like probably the easiest way, because there is that step for the enhancements of going through and closing the milestone. But if you knew that the only things left in the milestone are these things that have these feature gates, that would be one way to track it without adding like a ton of process, and then automate the pings off of that. And like just add a flag that says like so the kept YAML, let's say implemented, maybe something with a feature gate, and then maybe a issue tag with feature gate or something, and then constantly ping whoever about those things that are open there. I'm just making this up though, so I have no idea if this is a good idea or not.
I'm not sure on the. I don't know about leaving stuff in the milestone. I don't know who else is using that, and you may know. So that may well be the right or a viable way to do it. It's not what I would think of as milestone. Like the thing is that the feature gate removal doesn't happen in the same milestone. The feature gate removal happens in a future milestone. So the question is, how do we schedule work out?
Why not, when you have to mark your kept as YAML, the thing is you always have to go back and mark your kept as implemented, and then it has to be removed from a milestone. So there's that action that has to happen. And if there's something that makes like a feature milestone generated or something that then is trackable, like I think that's the spot.
Well, do we know, if we know when the feature gate needs to be removed, could we at that time just create an issue, remove feature gate blah, and assign it to that feature milestone and to that SIG, and
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it could be useful. That would be the sort of quick fix.
Yeah.
It could be useful to also track it in the kept.yaml, but we don't necessarily need to do that right away.
Right.
So
I think
we
it's
have
just a matter of writing up some process, and then making sure that the people who own the feature, and then also the enhancements, like lead or whoever who's going to go through and like double check things that are implemented, like, because that's two sets of people that would look at it and then make sure that this other thing is generated as they're closing out the milestone.
Yeah.
Issue or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best, the thing we can do right now. I will bring up one thing quick, we're out of time, is that we also have this perma beta thing where for APIs, we're doing this automatically now, where we actually will start warning this API is deprecated on your API, on your kube control queries. And we're also, in another release or so, going to start automatically stop serving APIs after they age out and they haven't gone from beta to GA. It's a little pressure on people to stop leaving things in beta. So we might want to think about whether there's a similar thing we can do there, but I don't know yet whether there is.
This was a question that I've made to Jordan. If we warn a user when he's using a GA feature, and he showed me in the code that yes, we already do this. So here it is. Like, so if the feature is GA, then we are going to issue a warning that you are setting a GA feature and this is going to be removed in a future release.
So can we, we should also see if, like, I suppose the issue is if you don't remove the feature gate and somebody uses it, then your execution of the process fails, right? So I don't know if that's really a failure condition or as another warning, but anyway, It should be rather. But we're out of time, so maybe we can bring that up there.
What's the
But it sounds like there's something. It sounds like there's something that like manually we can do relatively, like we could do for the end of 120, right? Like if we figure out just the steps of whatever closing the milestone will be, we just add those steps to like verify the feature gates or open a new issue or whatever it has to be for 120 to be closed out.
Yeah.
And then any automation can just, be done at a later date.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. If you can, that would be awesome if you could do that. And Ricardo, before we go, could you link the ticket in the agenda so that it's easier for us to find?
Yeah, I can link 4 of them. Okay, the 2 PRs and the 3 issues. That's 5 of them.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, so I think that we're past time, and I think that two things came out of that, Ricardo. One is Kirsten's team for the release team is going to create future issues for when future gates are supposed to be removed to send them to future milestones, and then we'll try to follow up more on the tickets around whether there's other things we can do.
And I will cut the PR to add the discussion link probably within the next hour.
Awesome.
Great. And I'll follow up with some of you because I have to get them all moving.
It sounds like we need
Anything
an
else, Lauren?
enhancements day.
Cool.
All right. I've got to run. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good
Later.
week.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.